I'm so glad you asked this because I don't talk about it enough. But yes, there is such a thing as thought tics. These are called mental tics. And I've struggled with these since childhood, so I'm going to talk about them because there's actually different types of mental tics, the same as there are different types of motor tics. So as some of you know, echolalia is when I involuntarily repeat something out loud that I've heard. But the mental tic that I struggle with the most is echoskepsy, which is basically echolalia but in my head. So I repeat something over and over again in my head. Something that I've heard, usually it's from the TV, I find that to be a really big trigger. But sometimes it's just random things that I haven't even heard anywhere. An example that I put in my book from when I was a child, this is my very first and earliest memory of me having echoskepsy, and it is also related to OCD, so mine kind of mushes together a little bit. But the youngest that I remember being was probably about 10 or 11, I think. And in my head, I started to put the word hashtag before every single thought. So if I had a song stuck in my head, you know when you have a song in your head over and over again, I would put hashtag before every lyric. We were in a car coming home from Wales from seeing my family. It was a long car journey. And my thoughts were just all like, hashtag I'm bored. Hashtag how long do we have left until we get home? And like, it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually quite distressing. But that's just one example of my earliest ones. To this day, I do still have the hashtag one sometimes, but not as often as the other ones. And coprolalia, which is the involuntary swearing that is involved with Tourette syndrome. There's also coproskepsy, oh god, you get what I'm trying to say, which is involuntary swearing inside your head. This is another example of a mental tic. And there is also paliskepsy, which is repeating your own words inside your head. I get this one a lot too, but it's usually more commonly for me echoskepsy. Yeah, I barely ever talk about mental tics because they're not as sort of obvious, and obviously they're not visible to other people. But I suffer with them a lot. It can be really disruptive when I'm watching TV with my family. And it's going to be a nightmare for me to explain, so I don't know if I'll be able to, but mine also links into the fact that I can do sign language, which I know sounds ridiculous. I'm going to try and explain as best as I can. I've had this for years now. It links in with my OCD and I'm unable to stop doing it. But for example, I'm watching a TV show. I'm going to take a real example here. Someone on TV says compromise as part of their sentence. And my head latches onto the word compromise and starts repeating it over and over and over again. Compromise, compromise, compromise. But I'm not just thinking it in my head, I'm also spelling it out with my fingers in sign language. But I don't sit there fully going C-O-M-P, compromise, over and over again. It's slightly different. I have to tap with my fingers the ones that I would be signing with, spelling out compromise. I don't know if this is making any sense, but this has been such a big struggle for me for years now. And it gets me so agitated when I'm doing it and I can't stop. Because everyone else is watching the TV and it could have been like 10 minutes later, but I'm still stuck on the word compromise that they said ages ago. And so I'm not focusing on what's now happening. And this is an example of a tic from Tourette syndrome, or other types of tic disorders as well, also possibly my PANS, that you can't see from the outside. So for example, I would be going compromise, and to me, I would just be doing that over, like honestly, so many times. So yes, mental tics are absolutely a very real thing. I find it so interesting to learn about all the different terms and everything, so I hope that I've educated some people and you've learned something new.